I've got I think I'll start out with an IDB question for Jeff.
Oh, there you go.
No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
Jeff
okay.
doesn't do IDB. I wanted to hear him scream and yell.
Jeff's like, it's getting late.
Yeah, well, you said you've been involved in it so many years and that. And I asked this of a couple of other people too we've had on. I'm always interested to know by people who've done this for a long time what they have as far as tips for people who are just starting out. We're getting into the time of year where you got to start thinking about playoffs also. What would you give? What kind of advice would you give someone who is going through their first fantasy football season?
Well, it really starts in the draft, I believe, because you have to when you draft, look at the end of the season as much as the beginning of the season. And you want somebody that's going to be there for you in the last couple of weeks of the season. So you look at some matchups who you think might be a good defense versus a bad offense, or vice versa, in the last couple of weeks. So if you're lucky enough to squeeze through to get into the playoffs, you have a strong matchups at the end. So if you're in the middle of the season and trying to boost your team up for the playoffs, it's going to be a little tougher because then you have to try to trade with the weaker teams in your league and try. I mean, if you're in a league where I lost my train of thought. If you're in a league that redrafts for the playoffs, there are teams that do that as well. That's a whole different scene. But trying to cut deals, if you're in the middle of the season and you didn't, like I say, prepare from step one at the draft, then it's the only real hope is to trade with weaker teams in your league for good matchups late in the season.
I've got a question for you, Jeff.
Well, we're on board with that too because that goes in line with what Eric talks about in his drafting strategy. You want to take guys off winning teams that will be there at the end, still scoring you points. You don't want guys that are on teams with losing records, typically.
And the risk you take as well is, the teams that are cemented in the NFL playoffs at the end of the season, if like New England was 15-0, they're not going to play.
Well, Peyton, it's been like that for the Colts the last 5 years. People with Peyton Manning get worried because the last 3 weeks doesn't matter.
Yeah,
that's right. And in that case, do you have balls enough to take his backup and play him in your Super Bowl for your league?
Probably not. Right.
No, but that's why in those situations, if you have a Peyton Manning, which this year it's not helping you at all, but you have one of those, a quarterback or any key player from one of those teams that has the potential to only have 1 or 2 losses and bench guys the last couple of weeks. You've got to draft good backups. You have to have you don't want to use their backup per se. You don't want, if you had Peyton Manning, you don't want to roll with Curtis Painter, but you have to have a good backup quarterback, a guy that you would feel comfortable plugging in every week, regardless. So, that's what I always try to say to people. Because everybody worries about those last few games if their guys are going to be sitting. And I'm like, you gotta have depth on your team. Because what if, like this year, guys that have been banking on Peyton Manning, he's out for probably the season. What if you don't have a good enough backup to start?
Well, and didn't go on IR, so it's costing you a roster spot.
Yeah. So you have to have a good enough backup that can be a starter every week. I'm always preaching depth and Jeff, you're good at that. And you got Fred Jackson.
You gotta have guys behind you that can step in there and do it, because it only takes one play to have an injury and your season's changed.
Absolutely. Jeff, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
I hate fantasy football and I want to quit.
Be serious.
I'm not kidding. Yeah, no, you stepped away for a few years from fantasy football, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you've come back this year. Are you rejuvenated? Are you excited about it again? Are you having fun? Obviously you're undefeated, so that's great. But does it feel like it did when you first started? Are you, what I mean?
It's a little tougher now because I'm not as familiar maybe with some of the new talent. I've been paying more attention the last couple of years. I didn't want to get back into it the first year I started, paying more attention to it. I didn't want to be weak. So I wait a year or two, and then I get in a league with, and no pun intended, with weak enough players to where I could dominate a league.